The night air over the dark stretch of water felt heavy and endless. The yacht floated silently in the middle of the vast black lake, rocking gently as small waves slapped against its polished sides. There were no lights nearby, no sounds of civilization, just the quiet hum of the engine and the faint whistle of wind cutting across the open water. Inside one of the cabins, Jack Abbott sat tied to a chair near the small window. The faint moonlight filtered through the glass, casting long shadows across the wooden walls. His usually perfect suit was wrinkled now, his tie loosened, his expression tense but controlled. Jack Abbott had spent most of his life dealing with enemies, betrayal, and power games. But this was something else entirely. He exhaled slowly, trying to think clearly. Victor, Jack muttered under his breath. There was no doubt in his mind. Only one man in Genoa City would orchestrate something this elaborate. Victor Newman. The moustached billionaire loved his games, and Jack knew that Victor never made a move without three hidden objectives behind it. Jack leaned back slightly in the chair, eyes scanning the cabin again. The door was locked. The window was too small to climb through. Even if he could break free and jump into the water, he'd be miles from shore. Victor had planned this well. Of course he had. Jack closed his eyes briefly as frustration pulsed through him. He had hoped Billy wouldn't fall for Victor's demands. Victor's threat had been crystal clear. Return Chancellor Industries or Jack would disappear forever. Jack had faith in Billy. His younger brother had come a long way, but Billy had always been emotional, impulsive, willing to risk everything for family. And Victor knew that. That was the whole point. Victor wasn't just targeting Billy. He was targeting the entire Abbott family. Jack's jaw tightened. He thought of Diane. He thought of Kyle. They must be worried sick right now. Somewhere in Genoa City, Diane was probably packing the floor, refusing to believe that Jack could just vanish like this. Kyle would be furious. And Billy. Billy would be desperate. Victor had placed them all exactly where he wanted them. Jack leaned forward slightly as footsteps echoed down the hallway outside the cabin. His eyes narrowed. The door opened slowly. But it was Victor who stepped inside. It was Patty Williams. For a moment, Jack just stared at her, stunned. Patty walked into the room with an almost theatrical elegance. She wore a pale blue dress, her blonde hair styled carefully, her makeup perfectly done as if she were attending some glamorous event instead of visiting a kidnapped man. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Well, hello, Jack," she said softly. Jack blinked once, processing what he was seeing. "Patty." She smiled widely. "You look surprised." Jack's voice was flat. "You're the last person I expected to see." Patty tilted her head, studying him like a fascinated artist examining a painting. "You always did look handsome in moonlight." Jack sighed slowly. Years ago, Patty Williams had been obsessed with him, not just a little crush. A dangerous, unpredictable fixation that had caused chaos in his life more times than he cared to remember. And apparently, nothing had changed. Patty slowly circled the room, her heels clicking softly against the floor. "I missed you, Jack." Jack didn't respond. Patty stopped in front of him and leaned slightly closer. "Did you miss me?" Jack raised an eyebrow. "You're working with Victor again." Patty smiled. "He called me." "Of course he did." Jack shook his head slightly. Victor knew exactly which buttons to push. Patty had always been unpredictable, emotional, easy to manipulate when it came to Jack. Victor had brought her here for a reason. Jack just didn't know what that reason was yet. Patty crouched slightly so they were eye level. "You know Victor believes in revenge," she said softly. "That's not exactly breaking news." "But this time," Patty continued, "he wants something more artistic." Jack studied her carefully. "What does that mean?" Patty grinned. You?" Jack remained silent. Patty stood up again and walked toward the window, staring out at the dark water. "Victor wants Chancellor Industries back," she said casually. "Yes, I figured that part out. But he also wants to hurt you." Jack's eyes narrowed. "He's been trying that for decades." Patty slowly turned back toward him. "This time he wants to hurt your marriage." Jack felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "Diane." Patty leaned against the wall. "You know Victor," she said. "He loves strategy, he loves drama." Jack's voice was firm. "Get to the point, Patty." She walked closer again, her smile soft but unsettling. He wants Diane to see something she can never forget. Jack didn't like where this conversation was going. Victor has cameras everywhere on this yacht, Patty continued. Jack's eyes flickered slightly. Of course he did. Victor Newman never ran an operation without surveillance. Patty leaned forward. And if Diane were to see you with another woman? Jack interrupted sharply. That's not happening. Patty's smile widened. You might change your mind. Jack stared at her. I doubt it. Patty slowly walked behind him and gently untied one of the ropes binding his wrists. Jack's eyes widened slightly. What are you doing? Patty whispered softly. I could help you escape. Jack turned his head. You could. She nodded. There's another boat. Jack felt a flicker of hope. But with Patty Williams, nothing was ever simple. What do you want? Jack asked. Patty stepped back in front of him. Her eyes sparkled with a strange intensity. One kiss. Jack stared at her. You're joking. She shook her head slowly. One kiss and I help you escape. Jack said nothing. Patty continued speaking softly. Just imagine it, Jack. You go home, Diane is safe, Billy doesn't lose Chancellor. Jack's mind raced. Victor had cameras. That meant Victor wanted to see this happen. That meant Victor wanted Diane to see it too. Jack felt anger rising in his chest. Victor was trying to destroy his marriage. Patty stepped closer again. You don't even have to mean it, she whispered. Jack's voice was quiet. You're playing right into Victor's hands. Patty shrugged slightly. Maybe. Jack stared at her, weighing the options. If he refused, he might never leave this yacht. If he agreed, Victor might get exactly what he wanted. Patty leaned closer. Time is running out, Jack. Jack slowly exhaled. Somewhere in Genoa City, Diane was probably praying he would come home. Billy was probably scrambling to save him. Victor had set a trap. A very clever one. Patty's voice softened. Just one kiss. Jack closed his eyes for a brief moment. Victor Newman had always been ruthless. But this was something darker. A psychological attack. Jack opened his eyes again. Patty was watching him carefully. Waiting. And somewhere in a control room on this yacht, Victor Newman was probably watching too. The air between Jack and Patty was thick with tension as the yacht rocked gently on the dark water. Outside, the lake stretched endlessly in every direction, a cold reminder that escape would not be simple. Patty stood in front of him, waiting. One kiss, she repeated softly. Jack looked at her, his mind racing through every possible consequence. Victor Newman was somewhere on this yacht. Watching. Calculating. Jack knew Victor too well. Nothing about this situation was accidental. If Victor had placed Patty here with him, it meant Victor wanted something very specific to happen. And cameras were likely hidden everywhere. Patty tilted her head slightly, studying his face. You're thinking too much, she said with a small smile. That's usually how I stay alive. Patty chuckled. Oh, Jack, always the strategist. Jack glanced toward the ceiling for a brief moment. If Victor had cameras, they were probably positioned where they could capture everything clearly. Patty stepped closer. I'm offering you freedom, she said. All you have to do is accept it. Jack's voice was calm but firm. You're offering Victor exactly what he wants. Patty shrugged lightly. Maybe Victor wants a show. Jack leaned back slightly in the chair. Victor had always enjoyed psychological warfare more than anything else. Destroying someone emotionally often meant more to him than simply winning a business battle. And what better way to damage Jack Abbott than by shattering his marriage? Jack pictured Diane. Her face, her voice, the fragile trust they had rebuilt after so many years of chaos. If she saw footage of him kissing Patty, the thought alone made his stomach twist. Patty leaned closer. You could be free tonight. Jack looked at her again. And what do you get? Her eyes softened. You? Jack sighed quietly. Patty. She held up a finger. Just one kiss. Silence filled the room. Finally, Jack spoke. You know Victor watching. Patty smiled. I assume so. And you're fine with that? Patty shrugged again. Victor likes entertainment. Jack studied her carefully. Patty Williams had always lived in a world of emotional extremes. Love and obsession blurred together for her. Victor knew that. Victor was using it. But Jack also knew something else. Patty's obsession with him was real. And that meant she might truly help him escape. Jack leaned forward slightly. If I do this, you get me off this yacht tonight. Patty nodded. There's a small boat on the other side. And Victor's security. I know when they rotate patrols. Jack narrowed his eyes. You've planned this. Patty smiled mysteriously. Maybe I like a little drama too. Jack exhaled slowly. The clock was ticking. Every minute he stayed here gave Victor more control. And somewhere in Genoa City, Billy was probably making decisions that could destroy the Abbott family business. Jack stood slowly as Patty finished loosening the ropes around his wrists. His muscles ached from being tied up so long. Patty stepped closer. They were now inches apart. Your freedom, she whispered. Jack looked directly into her eyes. This changes nothing between us. Patty's smile faded slightly. Just the kiss, Jack. For a moment he hesitated. Then Jack leaned forward. Their lips met briefly. A quick, controlled kiss. Nothing more. But it was enough. Patty's eyes closed for a moment as if savoring it. Then she stepped back. Deal honored, she said softly. Jack wiped his mouth slightly, already regretting the decision. Where's the boat? Patty pointed toward the hallway. This way. They moved quietly through the corridor of the yacht. Jack noticed the subtle red lights of security cameras mounted along the ceiling. Victor would see everything. Jack clenched his jaw. Victor had his footage now. Exactly what he wanted. They reached the rear deck where a small motorboat was tied to the yacht. The lake stretched endlessly in the darkness. Jack looked back toward the massive yacht towering above them. Somewhere inside, Victor Newman was probably smiling. Patty untied the boat ropes. You should go. You're not coming. She shook her head. Victor would notice. Jack stepped into the small boat. Thank you. Patty's expression softened. Maybe someday you'll realize we were meant to be together. Jack didn't answer. The engine started quietly. The boat pulled away from the yacht and disappeared into the dark water. Far above on the yacht's upper deck, Victor Newman stood watching the distant lights of the escaping boat. Beside him, a security monitor showed the recording of Jack kissing Patty. Victor smiled slightly. Perfect. One of his guards looked at him. Sir, should we stop him? Victor shook his head. No. He watched the screen again. Jack kissing Patty. Exactly the image he needed. Let him go, Victor said calmly. The guard looked confused. But sir, the ransom. Victor's smile deepened. Chancellor will come back to me. He turned away from the screen. And now Jack Abbott's marriage will begin to crumble. Miles away in Genoa City, Diane Abbott sat in the Abbott mansion living room. Kyle stood nearby, packing nervously. Billy had just entered the room, holding his phone tightly. I think we have a lead, Billy said. Diane jumped to her feet. Where is he? Billy was about to answer when the television suddenly flickered on. Kyle frowned. What the? The screen displayed security footage. A video. Jack inside the yacht cabin. And then, Jack kissing Patty. The room went silent. Diane stared at the screen. Her face slowly drained of color. Kyle looked shocked. That can't be real. But the footage was clear. Unmistakable. Diane's hands trembled slightly. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Jack. Billy's eyes widened as he realized what Victor had done. That son of a... The video ended. The television went dark again. Diane sank slowly onto the couch. Kyle rushed over. Mom, it's probably not what it looks like. But Diane couldn't take her eyes off the blank screen. The image of Jack kissing another woman was already burned into her mind. Billy clenched his fists. Victor planned this. Kyle nodded. He wanted us to see it. Diane remained silent. Jack might have had a reason. He might have been trying to escape. But the damage had already been done. And Victor Newman knew exactly how powerful a single moment of doubt could be. Far out on the lake, Jack's small boat raced toward the distant lights of Genoa City. He had escaped, but Victor's real attack had only just begun. The seed of suspicion had already been planted. And once that seed took root, even love might not be strong enough to pull it out.